So, what is it like to live with Tourette syndrome day after day? Hi, my name is Brittany Wolf. I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome when I was 7 years old, and I've been passionate about spreading Tourette syndrome awareness ever since. I spread advocacy on all kinds of social media, either under Brittany Wolf or under One Tic at a Time. And today I thought I would sit down and actually just discuss what it's actually like for me to live with Tourette syndrome. Now, a disclaimer. This is what it's like for me, an individual with Tourette syndrome, to live with it. It is not the same for every single person with Tourette syndrome. Everybody's journey with Tourette syndrome is different. My day to day is different, and we will definitely and absolutely get into that in this video as well. Living with Tourette syndrome, I've always explained it as like a roller coaster ride, or at one point a few years ago, I explained it as kind of like you're spinning a roulette wheel because you never know what it's going to land on, what tic it's going to land on, how many times you're going to get that tic, how severe it's going to be, how little it's going to be, or even how long that tic will last. My life is very up and down because of my tics and because of all of the co-occurring conditions that come with Tourette syndrome. For me, a lot of people with Tourette syndrome have a slew of co-occurring conditions. It's almost never just tics when it comes to Tourette syndrome. And for me, I have, along with tics, is OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is so much more than just wanting things to be neat and tidy and clean. A lot of people with OCD actually aren't very neat and tidy people. It's the compulsions and the obsessive thoughts and everything else, but that's a video for another day. And I also have anxiety. So those all kind of work together almost against me and my body, if I'm being honest, because when my obsessive thoughts or my intrusive thoughts and my compulsions get worse, a lot of times my tics get worse. And when I'm ticking, I also have something that's called Tourette OCD. So when I tic, I have to tic the same way on both sides of my body. So say, for instance, I have this foot kicking tic. If you're new here and you've never heard about it, it's where I kind of either slide my foot on the ground or I kick it on the ground, or some version of a slide or a kick with my feet. If I do that on my left foot, I have to do it on my right foot. If I start it on my right foot, I have to do it on my left foot. In my brain, it needs it to be the exact same. It needs it to be the same speed, the same cadence, the same pattern, everything. It has to sound the same. It has to feel the same. And that's where that OCD comes in to those tics for me, and where that term Tourette OCD comes from. They are still tics, but the OCD, those kind of morph into one in those situations for me. And you never know when it's going to flare up the most. There could be instances where like obviously I know that there's triggers for me. So caffeine is a trigger for me. Excitement is a trigger for me. Stress is a trigger for me. Really, any emotion that is enhanced in any way, those are triggered. Those are triggers for me. See that how I'm talking about new tics? That's a relatively new one, and it comes out every once in a while. And if my mouth doesn't make the noise the correct way, it's like my tics get angry, and I have to do it even more because it wants me to do it right. And what happens is, for me, and I keep saying for me, just again as a disclaimer, everything that I'm talking about today, this is in relativity to my life with Tourette syndrome. Not the same for every single person. But if I mess up, quote unquote, a tic too many times, my body starts wants to doing it more forcefully, quicker. It wants to do it more forcefully. It wants to do it quicker. And it's like my tics get angry with me. And a lot of times if I'm messing up my tics too often, that's when my tic attacks come in. And tic attacks can be a lot like anxiety attack and panic attacks. And sometimes for me, they can also build into one and morph into one thing. And what happens for me with my tic attacks is it usually is an onslaught of tics where I'm having multiple tics at once. My arm tics are going, my neck tics are going, my stomach tics are going, my feet tics are going, maybe some vocal tics are going. It might not be those body parts and those things all at once every single time, but that's an example. Or all of my more complex tics are happening, and my body just can't get it all out fast enough. And I don't breathe very well when I have tic attacks. I don't breathe very well when I tic in general. That's always been a thing for me. It's been kind of difficult sometimes. Some tics I can do still, like when I talk and everything else, but a lot of times my tics will stop me in my tracks with voice, vocal, anything. Because not only that, because that's a newer vocal one too for me, I don't have a lot of vocal tics, but I don't know what it is. My body just freezes up, and so I hold my breath. I don't know if it's part of the tic or part of the tics or what is with that. Maybe anybody else watching this with Tourette syndrome, comment below, let me know if you go through the same thing. But yeah, breathing is a problem for me when I'm ticking. So when I'm having a tic attack, it can get that much scarier for the people, I think, not only me, but for the people on the outside. I know that's what worries my mom and my husband and my family and loved ones around me when they're trying to get me back down from a tic attack. And so that's part of that roller coaster ride. That's part of that roulette wheel. Maybe I'm spinning it and I'm hitting the bonus spot of you get a tic attack today. Or maybe on, super special days, I get 2 or 3 tic attacks. Now, generally, that's usually if I'm in a very high intense portion of my life, like maybe I'm going through something really hard. I just went through something hard. I'm incredibly stressed out, or I'm incredibly excited about something. That's when those things can happen. But also, they can happen out of nowhere. And so that's what can be very difficult with it. Living with Tourette syndrome is I'm living inside of a body where I feel and hear all these things that my body's doing, but I don't get a choice to control anything that's happening. Now, obviously, my regular voice, my senses, everything that I'm talking about now, that's out of my control. But there's times where my body, it just does whatever it wants to do, like that, and I don't get a choice to stop it. Can I suppress it sometimes? Yes, but suppression leads to worse tics later, and it's incredibly uncomfortable as well. So it's not something that we want to be doing, and it's not something that generally helps, even though I think all of us do it from time to time, because ticking in public is another aspect that comes into living with Tourette syndrome. It's those unknowns. Once again, you don't know how many people are going to stare at you, laugh at you, mock you, maybe kick you out of a place. That happens a lot more for people with coprolalia and vocal tics, or a lot more vocal tics, or film you without your consent. All of these things can play into it, and it can make it really difficult sometimes to go out in public. It can make it difficult sometimes to do day-to-day tasks, but for me, for the most part, I can do my day-to-day tasks just fine, but that doesn't mean there's not interruptions from tics. Today, I was walking in a store with my husband, and I had to have him slow down because my foot kicks were going too much, and I couldn't walk quickly. Now, he is wonderful. He's the most amazing man in the entire world. Still to this day, have no idea how I got him, but that's one of those things that I had to happen. Or today, I live in Northeast Ohio, and it was crappy out this morning while we were out, and my foot kicking tic happened, and I'm kicking snow all over the parking lot. Meanwhile, there's a car stopped waiting for us to cross the road. So, these instances happen. So living with Tourette syndrome is really just, it's having a very keen sense of self, but also not knowing yourself at all, because I'm hyper aware of things around me, people around me, because of my tics. But at the same time, my body is fighting against me every single day. I don't get to choose what it does at any given time. Say you want to lay down at night. You've had a long, stressful day. You just want to lay down and go to sleep. So you lay down and go to sleep. Your body sits still. Maybe your mind races. Yeah. Really hard day. You can't stop thinking about things. You can't stop thinking about what you have to do, all of those things. But you get to lay down, and you get to just lay there. When I have had a really stressful, long, hard day, generally my tics are going to be worse, especially when I lay down. Because when I lay down, all those tics, kind of similar to suppression, anything that didn't get to come out earlier in the day, whether it was because I was suppressing on purpose subconsciously or just because the stress is finally getting a chance to release, that's coming out of my body in tics. So now I don't get to just lay there and relax. I don't get to just lay there and quote unquote peacefully think about all my thoughts swirling in my head. Because the more I think about my thoughts, the more my anxiety and my anxious thoughts ramp up. My tics react to that. That is like an Energizer bunny button for my tics. It's like, all right, it is go time. Everything out at once now. And it can be really hard. And I try to live a very positive life with it, because I don't think there's really another option for me. I don't want to be negative and miserable forever because of it. And that was something I think that I had to come to terms with and find my way through all while growing up. And I think my parents are a big attributor to that. But living with Tourette syndrome, it's finding that balance, because I'm allowed to have hard days and I'm allowed to hate it and think that it sucks. And But then at the same time, I'm trying to not let it dictate every aspect of my life, not let myself succumb to it every single day. But there are days where it happens. And the thing that's difficult, I think, is for people to understand that. That's, I think, some of the most difficult parts of Tourette syndrome is other people's inability to accept people with Tourette syndrome and accept that it is real. Because not only do I see it happening against myself with negative comments and rude things that people say and do and act towards me, but I see it happening to the people that I love and care about in the Tourette syndrome community, and that is incredibly upsetting and frustrating and aggravating to me. I get even angrier for that. But people's inability to accept that Tourette syndrome is real, they only want it to be real when they want it to be real, like when it makes them laugh, when they think it's funny, when they think it's convenient. I'm only allowed to tic. People with Tourette syndrome, it seems like we're only allowed to tic or have these things that happen to our bodies when people say it's okay. And they want us to look and act a certain way, or they want us to all look the same. And that's what's really hard. I think that's the most difficult part about living with Tourette syndrome is other people's inability to accept it. But I think I've rambled enough. I hope I gave kind of a good glimpse of what it's like to live with Tourette syndrome. As I said, it's just like an unknown. It's a giant mystery box that I didn't ever ask to open up, but I continue to open it every day. And tomorrow we'll see what mysteries my tics and my Tourette syndrome unfold for me. Might be the same mysteries as today, the same tics. It could be different ones. They could pop up at any time. So yeah, that is, I was going to say a nutshell, but not really. That was sort of a nutshell of what it's like to live with Tourette syndrome for me. If you have any other questions, if you want me to go into further topics or further detail about certain topics that I talked about here or questions that you might have in general, please leave them in the comments below. I love when people ask very honest, curious questions, and I would love to answer them for you to the best of my abilities and tell you what it's like for me in my life with it. So leave those questions in the comments below. Let me know what you think of the video. Don't forget to also subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you never miss a video and you can help become an ally to people with Tourette syndrome and tic disorders everywhere. I will see you guys next time.